Yo, what it is, YouTube? It's your boy Nix coming back with another bullseye of a video here today. So I got another vocal chain that I wanted to do for none other than the man himself, Snoop Dogg. I wanted to look into this very interesting dynamic here today. So if you guys do have any more comments or suggestions, go ahead and drop it down below, or any different ideas for any free UAD vocal chains I want to get. I'm more than happy to get to it. So the very first thing I wanted to talk about today is Snoop, D-O-double-G, and Mr. Dr. Dre. So this is something that's very important to me, I think about as an engineer. It doesn't matter how good you are as a rapper or engineer. It always depends about your relationship with your producer. You know, the person who is, recording you is kind of like taking a picture of you. So I like a picture like this a lot because you see a guy like Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. Them boys were being tapped in for back in the day, you know, since they was young dudes, they was being tapped in, you know. And I think that is very important, you know, the relationship between a rapper and an engineer or a producer, beat maker, and they producer, because essentially what happens is if we don't have no chemistry, I'm telling you, it's going to show up in the song. You know, the most important thing is about the life perspective and how you interact with people when it comes to mixing. I'm trying to tell you, it's like if you have like the best quarterback in the world, and then you have the best wide receiver in the world, but they don't really get along like that, so they not going to be that raw. But if you got an average quarterback and an average wide receiver, and they really like fuck with each other like that, then you going to see them balling on the field. And the same thing really apply to making music. It's really like your relationship with somebody, your dogs, you know, your friendships, the connections you make that go into the music. You know, like sometimes if you go to a studio and you feel like the engineer is not really understanding you as an artist, then, you know, sometimes maybe they just don't understand you as a person, who you are, your life perspective. That's why when I be in the studio, I always try to have a little small talk conversation with the people, really get to know the people. Because when you get to know somebody, then you could really put them into the music. So when they press play, they be like, damn, that's really him. And all the other people who ain't even rapping, who be in the studio, they're gonna be like, damn, that sound like him. So that's a very important thing, you know, the dynamic between a rapper and an engineer. So you have Dr. Dre right here and Snoop Dogg. So I'm gonna build a chain for Snoop Dogg. So the very first thing that I would do if it came to Snoop Dogg would be the microphone that I would pick. So I would definitely think about Snoop Dogg's voice. You know, whenever I'm picking the microphone, I always think about the voice. And Snoop Dogg, his voice is like very, very, very naturally warm. You know, his voice don't got that much low end in it. It don't got a lot of boom in it, but it's still very smooth. Snoop D-O-double-G. I got my Mac on my back and my, you know, like his voice is, I can't really say it's high. It's his voice is really the definition of warm. It's smooth. And that's what I think about when I think about California. You know, I think of when I think of California, I think about the Bay Area. You know, I've been to California before, and the way the buildings is like set up and like the way the atmosphere is, the landscape, that'd be beautiful. So I would think about something that's very smooth, high end, and that would make me think about the microphone I would use. So sometimes that's what I do. I use like the where the person came from, or an image in my head, to decide like what type of processing and stuff I'm gonna use. So that's my theme here, you know, kind of like smooth, silky warmth is what I'm going for. And the C800 is incredible. Usually if somebody has like something like a very kind of like squeaky voice, I feel like a C800 wouldn't be good, because it would kind of attenuate the squeakiness in their voice. It would make it a little bit too bright, a little bit annoying. But since I understand that Snoop Dogg's voice is kind of already warm and smooth, I think something like a C800 will play into his strengths, because, you know, it's giving some of the brightness to the top of his voice, but his voice is really just naturally smooth. So it's going to be very pleasing and bright at the same time. That's what I always try to go for. If I'm going for a bright vocal, I want it to be pleasing. You know, don't try to get bright vocals. Ask yourself, is this bright vocal starting to like bother me? You know, after you're listening to the song 100 times, is it getting annoying? So that's something to always understand about mixing, you know, tonal balancing. After that, you know, for the, a situation like this, I would definitely go with something like a Neve preamp. I know Dr. Dre was a guy, he used to love using the Neve preamp on 50 Cent. Sometimes he used the Avalon on 50 Cent, but he liked to use the Neve on Eminem and stuff like that. I know that for sure. So I would definitely use like a Neve preamp on Snoop Dogg's voice, just because I know that transformer is going to give it a little bit of warmth, and the transistor inside of the Neve is going to help give a little bit of bite, a little bit of snap to the top of his vocal, because he's still rapping about that gangster life. He's still rapping about that, you know, what he went through and everything. And we just want to make sure we could project the idea. So yeah, you know, we would have a Neve preamp, and then you know, that would kind of be going into our compressor, which I don't really see Dr. Dre using this, but this is the one I would pick for Snoop Dogg. So, you know, I would use something like the Fairchild 660, and right now I'm actually talking to it. So the difference between the 660 and the 670 is that the 660 and 670 have a different power supply, as well as the 670 is a stereo version, but they do have like different tonal characteristics. And I just love the way this vocal chain sounds. Y'all gonna be able to get it for free down below in the link, but I just love how it sounds because it's just really warm, it's really smooth, and a part of those transformers and also those tubes. The tubes actually add a little bit of brightness, which is very funny. Something like a CL1B, if you bypass it, no compression, or even like a LA2A, you will hear that tubes actually have like a not only warming characteristics, but a natural type of brightness to it. So that's what I really want with somebody like Snoop Dogg. So then you have the time constants here, and you know, with the time constants, essentially these are fixed. Those compressors that came later on down the line, they had variable attack and release, but the Fairchild is pretty interesting because it came from the times of broadcasting when it was on the radio, essentially. Okay, and then after that, what I would use for something like a Snoop Dogg vocal, Snoop D-O-double-G, I would probably use a pull tech on him. So yeah, you know, I use something like a pull tech and just adding a little bit of more brightness. Usually on the way in, I don't like the EQ, and that's not what I would do. I would just use the pull tech to run into it just to get a little bit more of that, you know, that brightness, a little bit of that air, that magic that the tube is giving me. So sometimes that's what people do with gear. They don't even actually use it. They just run through it just to get some of that, the sound of the components in it. That's why it's important to understand the components. Okay, cool. And then after that, when we're looking at this picture, you also have this AMS reverb here that, you know, Dr. Dre, you know, this guy, Dr. Dre, absolutely just loves it. This is another picture right here where they was using a pull tech, and this is also the SSL console. This AMS reverb is that this thing is so warm, and that's why Dr. Dre, he always went to it a lot. And you know, you can get a really rich, very rich reverb sound coming out of this, but you also have a bunch of different effects like a hall. I think you can kind of even produce kind of like a doubler type of thing, like an early reflections type of thing with this. So this one is just groundbreaking. You know, in the beginning, a lot of studios, they literally had to have a legit chamber room or literally an actual physical plate to produce the reverberations coming from it. But then you have something like the AMS, which kind of messed up the game because it was a digital type of reverb. So they were able to get all of those sounds in something that was way smaller and compact. And that's the thing you got to understand about having studios as well. Sometimes it's a lot of overhead expense. You know, that's why a lot of throwback studios went out of business. But yeah, essentially after that, we have the SSL console that Dr. Dre would use, and I feel like a part of that kind of like still, you know, even though Snoop is still like chill, laid back, he's still kind of aggressive with his street type of sound. Is I feel like it's the VCA type of circuitry of the SSL. So, you know, in a situation like this, you know, more than likely Dr. Dre is mixing all the stems in his vocals and stuff like that. He probably will put just a little bit, a little touch of EQ, maybe just you know, rolling off something like the highs and the lows for the reverb specifically is what I'm talking about, and that would really just help shape the tonal characteristics of a Snoop Dogg vocal. You know, very balanced, very chill, but at the same time he'll snap on you. So that's what I like about Snoop Dogg, you know. And this is pretty much the video that I got here for today. If you guys do want to download this chain, you could get it down below for free. Just want to say thanks a lot for being a great part of my YouTube family. Peace.